I know. All righty. I was telling Tim, I've now felt like the guy who grabbed hold of the tiger's tail. I started something, don't know how quite to ungrab it, but you know. Someone said, why'd you just give 30 seconds? Because you got to get up and get moving and get the blood going and wake up. Hey, that's a good-looking family on the screen. That's my evil twin, by the way, you know. Yeah. In the 1920s, in a small town in southern Mississippi, the Southgate Baptist Church was holding a deacons meeting. But one of the older men who used to be a deacon, but once he was getting to the age of 80, decided to step down and let the younger ones handle the business, you know, those who are about 50 to 60. Take care of all the business. He stepped down, but he heard the church was about to spend some money. So he hitched up his horse and wagon. He got one of his sons to drive him to the church. And he did. He gets inside the meeting, and the brothers, the other deacons, are talking, and they say, we should spend some of our money to buy a chandelier. Well, this older gentleman stands up and he says, brothers, I do not believe that we should buy the chandelier for the church. First of all, I believe if we were to order it from Sears and Roebuck, nobody around here has the education that when we say we want a chandelier, that we'd be able to spell it. Secondly, if we were able to order the chandelier and it got here, I don't think there's anybody here who knows how to play it. And brothers, I am not so worried about having a chandelier as much as we need lights for the church. That joke, I didn't make it up. But that joke was told by a very old comedian by the name of Jerry Clower. Yeah. Watch out now. Yeah, if you're not familiar with Jerry Clower, he is an old school comic from the deep South, and he's the type of comic, he tells stories. I mean, he doesn't crack punchlines, so to speak. He's a storyteller. And I've listened to Jerry Clower for years, and on one of his CDs, he tells another story. His dad ran off and left the family when he was a young boy. Times were tough. It was still around the time of the Depression. A lot of families were still suffering with poverty, and he has a younger brother and he has a mother. But the dad felt that the responsibility was too much, and so he ran off and left the family behind. Several years later, when he was the age of 14 or so, he was sitting in his kitchen and just cursing his dad. And just one of those days that the grief that his dad left him behind was really hitting him hard, and he was just cursing his dad. And he said that at the time they had a lady who helped them around the house. Older lady, couldn't read, but she was wise in years. And she looked across the table at him where she was doing working, and she lowered that finger at him and he said, "You listen, boy." He said, "The Bible says you honor your father and your mother. It did not say you honor your father and your mother as long as they stick around. It does not say you honor your father and your mother as long as they don't get drunk. The Bible says you honor your father and your mother because they're the ones that gave you life. And you remember that." Several years after that, while Jerry Clower went to college, he was able to track down his dad. And he got on a train and went up to where his dad was. And after being abandoned by his dad, and after a few years of severe grief and hardship towards his dad, they made peace. And were able to have a wonderful 20-year relationship before his dad died. And he says, all this was because this sweet, beautiful, illiterate housekeeper looked at me across the table and reminded me, you honor your father and your mother. We are moving to the next section of 10 Commandments. The first 4 dealt primarily with the people's relationship with God. The next 6 deal with a lot of us dealing with one another. But, as we will see, it still has to do with us handling our relationship with God. Our relationship with God mirrors so many other relationships. 2 primarily that are mentioned in the 10 Commandments, and that is the role of parent and child. And then later in a couple of weeks, we're going to look at the role of marriage. And how those relationships are also supposed to mirror our relationship with God. So many life events mirror our relationship with God. And isn't it interesting, in this period of time that we're living in, the divorce rate is as high as it is, and also we're living in a period of time in our country where there's a big problem with kids disrespecting their parents. And yet these are 2 relationships that we're told is supposed to mirror our relationship with God. If we don't understand the parental relationship, it's hard for us to see God in that role. And if we have a hard time understanding the role of marriage and what that's supposed to be in our life, then we misunderstand or don't understand one of the roles in which God wants to have in our life. But again, we'll do marriage in a couple of weeks. Today we're talking about honoring your mother and your father. I remember when we were in Antlers, Oklahoma. That's where we were before we came down here. I was teaching a teen class, and the first class that I got to work with them was on a Wednesday night, and I was working with another guy, we were doing the 10 Commandments. Oh, ironic. And the first one I got to do, because they started this before we got down there, or up there, in our case. You can't go much more down in America where we are, can we? We were up there. There we go. We were north. And we were doing 10 Commandments. First one I got to do was honor your father and your mother. And Antlers, again, small town of 3,000 souls, and and football was a big deal. We're in the South, and I felt sorry for them because at the time, God bless them, they hadn't won a high school football game in 7 years. But the football players still walked around with a swagger, like they were awesome, and I was just like, okay. But anyway, so some of them did have, your cocky, swaggered, small town, high school boy. All right, if you can picture it. We had some in that class. And we were talking about honoring your father and your mother. And this young kid, he was a freshman. He was a young kid, he was a freshman, so that put him, 14? He looks at me and he says, I'm not honoring my mother and father until they honor me first. Laugh with me, parents. 14-year-old boy looks at me and says, I'm not honoring my father and mother until they honor me first. Kids, if you have this feeling towards your parents, I pity you. And that's why I laugh. I looked at this kid. I was baffled. Not because I haven't heard that before, but because he honestly believed that. And I felt sorry for him. And I said, okay. okay. What have you done? And he was like, what do you mean? What have you done? I don't understand the question. I said, okay, let's break it down. You woke up this morning in whose house? My parents. The clothes you put on, who bought them? My parents. The food you ate, who paid for that? My parents. Who drove you to school? My parents. And we just went down this. You see what we did. We drove this down for this 14-year-old kid who lived in a small town, who came from an affluent family in that small town, who has never wanted for anything, and he was just now getting to the age, he grew up on a ranch, so he was familiar with work, but he hasn't had to pay for anything. He's never had to provide anything for himself. Everything he had, he came from his parents, but he was so blind as to think that for some reason, before he respected his parents owed him respect. When in reality, the kid hadn't done anything. It's nothing against the kids, and if you're a young person in here, you think I'm picking on you, I'm not. You haven't been around long enough to do anything yet. Your time will come. It will. Be ready, because once that starts, that don't quit, does it? Enjoy this time that you have. My dad used to say to me, because I used to sit around the house and I used to tell my dad, I'm bored. He said, well, enjoy it, boy, because one day you will never be bored again. Dad was right. Honoring our parents. Honoring our parents. This is something that has gone down in the society we live in America today. I don't know if you watch TV regularly, sitcoms regularly, but you notice how parenting styles and what they try to tell us has changed. And it's always been this way. Don't look to the golden days of Hollywood and think it was any different. It was true then. You remember back in the day where you had shows like My Three Sons and some of those, back in the 50s. It used to be that dad knew everything and mom didn't know anything. All right? And then you move more closer to more regular times, maybe like the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and really a lot in the 90s, because that's when, in the 80s and 90s, when The Simpsons came out, and that's when it flip-flopped. Mom knew everything and dad didn't know anything. Thanks, Homer Simpson. And but then you look at these days, parents don't know squat, and it's the kids who know everything. Look at the lies that we're being told. And kids, God bless them, they're being fed these line of reasoning that your parents just don't understand you. Your parents need to allow you to be who you truly have been destined to become. You're 8 years old. You don't know whom you're destined to become yet. I'm sorry. The world does not revolve around the kids. It's that when we are young, we know the least. Right? How many times have you ever heard an adult say it, someone way older than us say it, or maybe you've said it yourself, oh, I wish I could take what I know now and go back in time to when I was young, or something along those lines. Why? Because when we were young, we don't know. We don't know. And again, it's not a knock against the kids. They don't have the life experiences yet. Their time will come. But it's when we are young that we know the least. And that's why the plan was God would bless us with parents, so that they could help raise us up, so that we can come to know what it is, primarily to be a follower of God, but also to know what it is to be in a family. That was what the role was supposed to be. But isn't it interesting, when we come to the 10 Commandments, God took time out in giving Moses the 10 Commandments to make one that says, honor your father and your mother. Kids might say, what about honoring your kids? It's not about that right now. Sorry. It's about honoring your father and your mother. To borrow from the Lion King, it's a circle of life thing. You learn to honor your father and your mother and you live that way, guess what you're prepared to do when you have kids of your own? To raise them up in those ways as well. But it's also supposed to be an illustration. The relationship with God, one of the ways that it's also seen is a relationship between child and parent. We respect God like we respect our parents. We honor God like we honor our parents. The relationship between man and God can be seen in the family dynamic between parents and children when it's done correctly. It was supposed to show us something. You know, we could have the relationships that we can have in heaven on earth based on how we raise our kids and how our kids treat us with honor. And it's not just here. You know, there's several times in the Old Testament, and this isn't even all of them, but that talks about those dynamics between parents and children. You can look at Exodus 21. Anyone who attacks his father or mother must be put to death. Whoa! You ever heard people today talk about spanking? Anyone who attacks his father or his mother must be put to death. That's serious. Why would God do that? Why? God would do that because He was trying to teach them something. To honor your father and your mother is right up there with honoring God in the eyes of the children. And one, think about today's times. One should not be willing and ready to raise their fist up to the face of their parent without a major consequence. It's about honor and respect for those who have come before us. He also said, anyone who curses his father or mother must be put to death. Wow, could you imagine if we still did that today? Ooh. I don't think schools would be as overcrowded. And let's be truthful. Time for truthfulness. Some of our kids wouldn't be born today because we wouldn't have been survived that either, wouldn't we? Oh, shoot. You thought I wasn't going to put it on us too, huh? Yeah. Again, it's about respect. It is all about respect. How we view our parents walked hand in hand with how the people were supposed to view God. After all, let's face it. Kids, except for Mary and Jesus, kids weren't just creating themselves. The parents created the children. The children, you kids, you owe your parents life. And everything that they have given you, you owe back to them. Again, does this mean that you'll never do anything? No. We're talking about your first part of life now. No, your time will come. You might believe me, you might not, but what you're going through right now, regardless of who kids you are, this is the easy part. Your time will come. But it will come better, and you'll be more blessed if you honor your father and your mother now. So that you may learn, so that you may grow, so that you may be more ready. You notice I didn't say ready. You'll be more ready for when you have kids of your own. I remember when Ethan came along. When Ethan, I don't think I ever called. I've been away from my parents. My parents live in Dallas. I've been living away from my parents since 2004. But I don't think I've ever called them as many times as after I had a son of my own for that first month. I was calling them almost daily, not asking for advice. I was apologizing. Is what I was doing. I was just, they would answer. I would say, I'm so sorry for everything that I ever done. Why? Because I didn't understand. I didn't understand so much when I was young. It's not my fault. I was just young and inexperienced. But it's not until I had kids of my own that I said, oh, yeah, these kids are going to sometimes rip my guts out and dance in the pain, but I'm going to love them anyway. Because I'm a parent, it's what I do. Because that's the love that God has for me. It's all about respect. He also says in Leviticus chapter 19, verse 3, every one of you shall reverence his mother and his father, and ye shall keep my Sabbaths. I am the Lord your God. Honor. Listen to your father who gave you life, and do not despise your mother when she is old. We'll talk about more in a minute. But again, honor. The father of the righteous will greatly rejoice, and he who sires a wise son will be glad in him. Let your father and your mother be glad, and let her rejoice who gave birth to you. Kids, do not put it on yourselves, because some kids take great pride in this. Do not make it hard on your parents. Make your life a joy. My brother came to me. I have an older brother, 3 years older than me, like I said. And he came to me once and when he was still in his really foolish stage. He's gotten a lot better now, but he was in a really foolish stage of life. And he looked at me and he said, "You should thank me." And I said, "Why?" He said, "Because I broke Mom and Dad in for you." I was like, "You are an idiot, aren't you? Lucky they didn't kill you." He was one of those that they would have drug him to the front of the town and stoned him to death. But he took a pride in that when he was young. Gotten a lot better, by the way. And but that's the way it's kind of gone to thinking. In this day and age, we take a pride upon ourselves to drive our parents nuts, when in reality it's supposed to be the flip-flop. How come a lot of people don't know God today? Because the family dynamics of a lot of families have gotten off kilt. It's supposed to be a mirror image. Our relationship with our parents and our relationship with God. The honor and respect that we give our parents is the same honor and respect that we're supposed to be giving God. And if we don't honor and respect our parents, we are not honoring and respecting God. Because it's all about who created that life. Where did that life come from? Kids think they're brilliant these days, but kids, you did not create yourself. It all goes back to the honor that we're supposed to be giving God. Ephesians chapter 6, verse 1 and 3. Children, obey your parents in the Lord. Why? For this is right. Just think about this statement. This is one we throw at the kids a lot, but think about this statement. Children, obey your parents in whom? In the Lord. Why? For this is right. This is just. Guess what? And I had to learn this lesson too. And kids, don't think I'm picking on you this morning. A lot of the stuff I'm talking about kids did, I did myself when I was young. And those that came before me, they did stuff like this when they were young too. This is something that we all have to learn. And guess what? You're going to be teaching these same lessons to your own kids one day. Because it's something that has to be refreshed and it has to be known. But we got to teach our kids, children, obey your parents and the Lord, for this is right. It's not about your kids or your parents deserving it. We can't have that attitude like the kid did in Antlers, say, "Well, I'll respect my parents after my parents respect me." No! That is not the way it works, because your parents were here first. And it is right that you obey them. Now, does the Bible talk about that parents, you shouldn't embitter your children? Yes, it teaches this in Ephesians 6. But we're not talking about that right now. We're talking about kids and parents. Kids, honor, respect, obey your parents and the Lord for no other reason than it is right. It is just, it is righteous that you do this. So many people in the world today don't know God. Why? One reason is because our family dynamics isn't showing them God. Respect has gone out the window. Obedience has gone out the window. And instead, we seek to pride ourselves on how much we can be disrespectful or disobedient. If we want the name of God to shine out in the world around us, we do it with our words and deeds, yes, but we're also supposed to be able to do it with our families. Does our family mirror the relationship that we're able and supposed to have with God? It all comes down to those family issues. He goes on in verse 2, honor your father and mother, which is the first commandment with a promise. You know, we've been doing these 10 commandments now for a bit. You realize this is the first one with a promise? Have you caught that? Have you seen it? What's the promise? So that it may go well with you and that you may enjoy long life on the earth. It was a commandment with a promise. Honor your father and mother so that it may go well with you. Why? Because God will make it so? Yes, but there's also a reason. If we tend to listen to our parents more, or listen to their instruction and listen to their advice, we may learn something. Guess what? Why? Because they've been down that way before. Again, my brother, God bless him, he's been through a lot. But I remember growing up, he used to always say, drove me nuts. So I was just like, oh. You know, and he was bigger than me for a period of time, so I couldn't lip off to him. He hit me. But I'm the bigger one now, but anyway. But he used to say, I just want to make my own mistakes. You idiot. What are you doing? Parents are there to raise us, to instruct us, to guide us. And guess what? We take it upon ourselves as kids to do that role on us. It won't go well. You say, well, I know so-and-so and that rarity happened. Okay, that's a rare occasion. The way that God designed it is we're supposed to learn from those who come before us. Respect them. Honor them. Obey them. So it will go well for us and that we may live long in the life on the earth. It's a promise that He gave the Israelites. Because God will make it so, yeah, but also because, guess what? Kids are blessed by the knowledge of their parents. We are blessed by the knowledge of those who have come before us. That's why in the church setting we have elders. And the elders are grown men who have lived life and have seen and experienced. And they're able to pass down that knowledge down to the family. And again, it all mirrors this type of relationship that we're supposed to have with God. They need honor. But also, as Mufasa and the Lion King used to tell us, it's a circle of life thing. Next slide, please. 1 Timothy chapter 5, verses 1 through 8. 1 Timothy chapter 5, verses 1 through 8. Lo and behold, as kids, our parents are older than us. Isn't it weird how that works? Since our parents age quicker than us because they are older than us, what happens when that time comes, when they reach an age where they're not able to take care of themselves? A time comes in which us, as their children, have decisions to make. And we step up. And we start taking care of our parents. When we were young, our parents took care of us. Again, this was part of the plan. Listen to what Paul told Timothy in 1 Timothy chapter 5, verse 1. Do not rebuke an older man harshly, but exhort him as if he were your father. Treat younger men as brothers, older women as mothers, and younger women as sisters with absolute purity. You know, this is one of those couple of verses that I really love, and I seek to apply this whenever I deal with the people around me, especially my church family. You are family to me. You know, those of us who go into ministry and we have to relocate, we leave our blood family to become a member of a spiritual family somewhere else. And I view you as our spiritual family. And when I speak to you, if you're an older man than me, I speak to you as a father. If you're an older woman than me, I speak to you as a mother. And if you're my age or younger, I speak to you as brothers and sisters. Why? Because this is family dynamic. It is a family business. With absolute purity. In verse 3, give proper recognition to those widows who are really in need. But if a widow has children or grandchildren, these should learn first of all to put their religion into practice by caring for their own family, and so repaying their parents and grandparents, for this is pleasing to God. The widow who is really in need and left all alone puts her hope in God and continues night and day to pray and to ask God for help. But the widow who lives for pleasure is dead even while she lives. Give the people these instructions too, so that no one may be open to blame. If anyone does not provide for his relatives, and especially for his immediate family, he has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. Let this sink in. And these days we have things like Medicare, we have retirement, we have nursing homes, and things of this nature. But you've got to remember, back in biblical times, they didn't have that. Which means that as parents got older, it became more and more up to the kids to take care of their aging parents. And as we know, human nature being human nature, we can do what's required of us with joy, or we can do it begrudgingly. Paul told Timothy, tell the others, if you want to show your religion, if you want to keep the faith, tell them, as their parents get older, especially mom, as your parents get older, take it upon yourself to look after them. To look after them. Out of the honor and respect that you are raised with from childhood, go back to your memory and look at how much that your parents sacrificed, and how much they saved, and how much they prayed, and how much they studied, and how much they tried. You know what? As parents, guess what? We're not perfect. We try, and sometimes we make mistakes, and we have to make things right. But we keep going, we keep trying. Why? Because we love our kids so much. We're passionate about them, seeking to make them worth something. It's like that old sign says, we spend so much time making sure that we have a good world around for our kids, or we spend that much time making sure that we have good kids around for the world. But we give our hearts, and we give our souls, and we give our spirits into infusing our kids with what is good. One day, as our parents get older, and we realize they can't do it on their own anymore, that we still have the love and the honor to look after them. God says this shows our religion. It also says that if we don't do this, we deny the faith and are worse than an unbeliever. Turning our back on our parents is a disowning. It's a turning our back on those who created us. And in a sense, it's like turning our back on God. I want to show you a picture from the LupPlace family album. All right. This was from, there's a date on it, 10/30, on the day before Halloween in 2010. When we were in New Mexico, we did a thing. We got all the kids around the time of Halloween, whatever that Friday was, or Saturday, whatever day we decided to do it. We got all the kids together, we dressed them up for Halloween, and we went around to the older people of the church family's house so that they could do some trick-or-treating. The older folks loved it. All right? And so that year, in 2010, I was the Mad Hatter. Obviously, I'm 6'4", but I was 7'4" with the hat. But I want you to pay attention to Mr. Scarecrow there. That's a dear friend of mine named Jim Warzinski. You thought LupPlace was bad, all right? Jim Warzinski. His mom has passed on several years ago, but for the first 6-7 years that we were in New Mexico, Mom lived with them. And Jim he works with the computers at Border Foods, which was Deming's big production. That's where the Hatch Green chili got canned if you buy Hatch Green chili at the store. And it was his job to oversee all the computers in the plant. Lucky him. He got called in a lot for work. But his mom lived with him. And Mom, she got the Alzheimer's. And, it's one of those things, it doesn't get better with time. In fact, it gets really, it gets worse as you go on. And there came a time in which she was getting to the point where they had to put her somewhere. They had to put her in a home. And they fought that for years. Because he always put it into his mind that as long as my mom is living, if she has nowhere else to go, she's going to live with me. And she did for several years. The problem was that the house that they lived in was on a highway that connected Deming to Columbus and then went down into Mexico. So it was a major highway, so to speak. And but they had to fence up and everything. But they always had those fears: what happens if Mom gets out, and was able to get out the fence? It would be disastrous. And so he comes to me one day, and he says, Mom's Alzheimer's is getting worse. It's getting harder and harder for her to recognize any of us. And, and it's getting harder and harder to go to work because she's becoming more and more a fall risk. And, and it's just not a good thing. I feel like that the time has come that we're going to have to put her into this nursing home in Las Cruces that has a specialized Alzheimer unit, but I feel, this is what he said to me, he says, I feel like a horrible son. I feel like I'm letting her down. And Jim's all about family. I mean, by the age of 50, he had 10 grandkids. But, so he's all about his family. And he was feeling this pain, and I had to look at him and I said, you are a good son. And through a period of meetings, I told him, I was like, look, you don't want to do this, and everybody knows that, but we also got to think of what's good for her. She's entering into a place now that you're not trained to handle. And again, you and your wife, you still got to go to work. And you don't have the ability to keep somebody at home. What if something bad does happen? So reluctantly, he did it. He put her in a home in Las Cruces, and she passed maybe 6 months or so later. But it was gut-wrenching for him to do this. He didn't want to do it. And if you've ever lived in a home with someone who is suffering from Alzheimer's or dementia, it's not a walk in the park. It's not a picnic. But he didn't want to send his mom away because he felt like he still owed his mom honor, and he believed in sending her away, he was dishonoring her. And which I had to tell him, no, you're looking after her safety. Because it's training versus non-training, and what if the worst should happen and you don't have the means to deal with it? But he still felt the honor and the responsibility of wanting to give his aged mother the good life that she deserves for no other reason than she is mom. Do we see this level of respect in our families today? And if we don't, this is part of the issue of why people do not see God. The honor and respect that we're supposed to be giving our parents is the same respect we're supposed to be giving God. And how we treat our parents is a mirror image of how we are treating God. And so when you read through the Bibles or you look around at the world today, and the Bible talks about a period of time where kids are disrespecting parents and there's all this strife in the family, and we look around today and we see kids disrespecting parents, and again, it's a mirror thing. This is how we honor God. If we want to be God's people, and if we want the world to see God, we must be God-centered families. And one of the ways in which we do this is, kids, honor your parents. Are they perfect? No, they're not perfect. They're people. But they created you. They created you. You have life because of them. And for no other reason than that, you owe them respect. Kids of my generation, as our parents get older, do we still have the courage to honor and respect our parents and to keep looking after them as they start to get older? You know, I'm thinking about this. You know, I'm the youngest in my family. I'm 36. That's not far away from 40. Oh, wow! I remember when my dad was 40. I mean, this is how freaky it is, you know. But I know that, you know, when I turn 40, my dad's going to be 70. You know, he's 30 years older than me. You know, will I have the courage to look after them, to show them the honor and respect that's due them for no other reason that they're my parents? I already told them, as long as we're able, as long as it's nothing, you know, serious or life-threatening, that you don't need, you know, 24-hour hospital care, you will not have to waste away in a home if we have the ability. You know, I'm telling them that now because of honor and respect. It comes full circle. It's how life is. We're born young. We die when we're older, typically. That's the way it is. But in our life and in our family dynamic and our family matters, it also mirrors our relationship with God. Do we respect God as much as we respect our parents? Or contrariwise, do we respect our parents as much as we respect God? If we hold them up equal, then it was a sign of respect for both. I pray that as we move on from this time, if we have rifts in our family, seek to mend them. Kids, if you have something against your parents, seek to mend it, make it right. Life's too short. It really is. Life is too short. And I have not met a single person, regardless of how old, whose family or whose parents have passed, that they still don't miss them. Life is too short. Don't wait till it's too late to mend the rifts. Seek to make it right. Honor them. Like it or not, they might have been a drunkard. They might have done other stuff that was really, really bad. But they still gave you life. Seek to mend those fences. If we have a rift between us and our Heavenly Father, God, seek to mend those fences. Life is too short. Don't put it on the back burner. God is waiting. God is there, and He's waiting for you to come home so that we can be this family again. This was in the Ten Commandments. This was supposed to be in the foundation of the nation of Israel. The family dynamic of parent and child. This is how much it meant to God. Honor this relationship today. This morning we'd like to offer the invitation to those of you who might be hurting, who might be suffering, who might have a hurt, we would love to pray with you and counsel you and be with you. Or as what's already happened today, you might wish to become a member of our family, we would love to welcome you. Or you might wish to become baptized, to have your sins washed away. We would love to assist you in that decision. Your Father is waiting for you to join Him. But whatever needs you have, would you please come down as we stand?